8:04.
Okay, here we go. Let's take a prayer, please. Master of all worlds, highest power, merciful parent of compassion, in your presence, eternal one, source of strength for us, as you have been for our ancestors, we very humbly acknowledge you. What are we? What is our life that you have done such great kindness to us? Therefore, we place our appeals before you, so that you may forgive and absolve us of all our faults and failings, that our faults never become barriers between us and you. And may it be your desire to prepare our hearts to feel awe and love for you. May you listen to these words of ours, and may you open our encumbered hearts through the mysteries of your Torah. May this, our study, be a source of pleasure before your throne of glory, like sweet incense. May you shower down upon us the light of our soul source in all the ways by which we define ourselves. May the sparks of your holy servants, through whom you have revealed these words to the world, shine and sparkle. May their merit, their ancestors' merit, and the merit of their Torah, their innocence and their holiness, stand for us, so as to prevent us from stumbling when we study these words. In their merit, may our eyes be illumined by what we study. As in the saying of the sweet singer of Israel, open my eyes, that I may gaze into wonders of your Torah. May the words of my mouth and the thoughts of my heart be acceptable to you, my rock and my redeemer. For it is the Eternal who grants wisdom. It is from his mouth that knowledge and understanding issue forth. Na 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 na. Na 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 na. Na 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 na. Na 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 na. Na 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 na. Na 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 na. Na 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 na. Oh no 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 no. Ah na 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 na. Ah na na na. Na 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 na. Ah na na na. Ah na 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 na. Ah na 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 na. Ah na 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 na. Ah na 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 na. Ah na 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 na. Ah na 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 na. Oh no 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 no. Oh no 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 no. Oh no 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 no. Oh no 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 no. Oh no 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 no. Oh no 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 no. Oh no 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 no. Oh no 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 no. Oh no 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 no. Oh no 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 no. Ah na 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 na. Ah na na na. Ah na 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 na. Ah, no, no, no. Ah, no, 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 no. Oh, no, 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 no. Oh, no, 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 no. Oh, no, 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 no. Oh, no, 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 no. Oh, no, 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 no. We're on page 351, the very bottom of the page. And we just spoke about the mystery of the South. Those are the last words that are mentioned in that the end of that paragraph, 3 lines from the bottom. The South is the side of Chesed, the side of all giving and all light and goodness, radiance. And now we have the contrast. What is it that comes from the side of the North? So who's going to read for us? This Eve up, look at that. All right, Beryl, your reflexes are great as always.
From the side of the South. That's weird.
Oh, from the side of the North.
From the side of the North, rungs extend below until reaching below. Scoria of gold on the impure side, defiling filth, linked to this above, linked below. Here male and female couple as one. Rider, serpent, mystery of male and female. This mystery is Azazel.
Okay. So now we got the bad guys. And this is the counterpoint. From the North, we have levels of powers of beings that go down, 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 down. And they are described here in a number of phrases. One, defiling filth. Okay, not good, not a positive state. And then we have scoria of gold. Look at 259, the note.
Okay, let me get on the correct page. Scoria.
Kastufa.
Dross, slag, scoria. A neologism apparently based on the Aramaic kuspa, hummus, husk, residue. Gold symbolizes Gevurah, while the dross symbolizes the forces of evil, left over after refining process of emanation.
Okay, the rest we don't have to read. Okay, so what it is there's a refining process. In order to get pure gold, you have to process the material that's mined, the mineral material. You have to burn out all of the stuff that's not gold, and that melts away, and that's the dross. So here, the Zohar makes up a neologism, means a new word, makes up its own word. The Zohar does this not infrequently. And it uses this word as a put down of the North side, the evil side, the filth, defiling filth, but it gives us this challenging image that the filth comes from a process of refining. It's the residue of a process that creates something good. This alludes to an issue that we've talked about many times. Where does the bad stuff come from? Where does evil come from? Where does all of this bad stuff come from? So if we talk about the right and the left and the north and the south within the divine world, within the divine circle, then the right side is chesed, the left side is gvura, but this is all within godliness. And gvura plays a positive function as a way of creating containers for the good, right? But the limit is necessary in order to package the good, which itself is limitless. So that's a positive function. But then we've got the demonic. The demonic is not part of God in any kind of easy way of thinking of it. But somehow or other in this paragraph and continuing, we have this conundrum. How could there be anything that's not God if God is everything? So in what way does that which is outside of God earn any kind of existence if the source of all existence is good? Okay, this is the old question phrased in many other kinds of ways as well. So one answer is that the evil is a byproduct of the creation of good. And that's this dross idea. So the gold is shiny, good, it's precious, but to create goodness, you have to have this other, the slag stuff get refined out. The problem is when it's not separated out and kept separate, but as it says here, linked to this above, linked below. Until the final refinement happens, there is a fluid link between the precious desired substance and the undesirable substance. And the desire of the extreme left-hand side, right? The evil itself is to continue to draw sustenance from the source of existence and life, not to be separated out finally and definitively, because then it's a what's the word, something that's leeching off of something else. It's what's without being connected, it will die. Parasite, that's the right. Yeah, so it's a parasite. So it needs to be connected. And it needs to always be linked up with the world that is desired. And then we have the next imagery, which brings us into more organic and living imagery. Here, male and female couple as one. Rider, serpent, mystery of male and female. So we have the rider and the serpent. If you look at the 261, this is an allusion to an ancient myth, bringing us back to the beginning of the Garden of Eden story. 261, Harold, you got it?
Rider, serpent, mystery of male and female, the demonic couple of Samael and Lilith, pictured as a rider on his serpent. See Perquet de Rabbi
Eliezer.
Samael took his hand,
His band.
and descended and saw all the creatures created by the Blessed Holy One. He determined that the most cunningly evil was the serpent. As is said, now the serpent was slyer than any creature of the field that Yud-He-Vav-He Elohim had made. He, the serpent, looked like a camel, and he, Samael, mounted and rode him.
Okay, so the idea of this wavy serpent, the silhouette or the outline echoes the two humps of a camel, and then the idea of mounting here is used both in terms of jumping onto a camel, but also mounting sexually. And we have here this kind of bestiality combined with erotic and sexual imagery on its own, of male and female, but in a ich, right, in an ichy way. This is the debasing of the mystery of male and female, which we've had before in a holy way, right? This is, how is Jacob going to become able to connect with Shekhinah? He needs to have a wife. He needs to find his human partner in life that he can engage with sexually in a holy way, so that then God's own sexual life can be augmented and then flow down into the world. Here we have the the nightmare of sexuality as it's imagined and feared by so many, where sexuality becomes the field of demonism, right? The passions are uncontrollable. They lead you to degradation. They're the path of evil. This is the mystery of Azazel. So this is now given a name, Azazel. If we look at 262,
the mystery is Azazel. This wilderness demon appears in Leviticus 16, where he is offered a scapegoat, bearing the sins of Israel on Yom Kippur. In Perkei de Rabbi Eliezer 46, he is identified with Satan.
right? So this is Azazel, this is Samael, this is Satan, this is the Yetzer Hara, this is the Malach HaMavet, all the bad figures that are part of the rogues gallery. But Azazel also, I think, may be referred to here by the Zohar according to an early myth, where Azazel is one of the fallen angels, or the head representative of the fallen angels. The fallen angels are the angels that are supposed to be at God's behest. They're supposed to be helping God, serving God. But then they look down. We have a little fragment of this myth in the Torah itself. They look down at the daughters of men. They see that they're very beautiful, and they copulate with the daughters of men, and that's where the giants come from, and so on. So there's this enigmatic story at the beginning of the Torah. But it's later on, it's literally fleshed out by, especially in the Enochic literature, the books of Chanoch. And Azazel is the rebel angel, the angel that, we have in many other subsequent images. The guy that was supposed to be a good angel and has a lot of power and a lot of talent, but can't abide staying in their place, doing what they're supposed to do, and instead they rebel. And what we have here is the mystery of the joining of the divine realm with the human realm. Literally mentioned already in the Torah itself. And here again, the struggle of how do we picture this this evil force. Now, in what way do we limit its origins and its operation, or in what way do we have to be consistent and say no, that if it's alive, it's got to come out of a source of life. So this is this paragraph. Any comments at this point? All right, we continue.
Rabbi?
Yes, where are you? There you are.
I find myself wondering at these stories. I mean, they're in the Torah, and for that matter, the whole story of Bilam and Balak. I mean, they're so. I don't know how to describe them. They're primitive in a way, and they're sitting around the campfire and let's scare ourselves type stuff. Where do they come from? How do we explain them? They almost don't seem like Torah.
Well, that makes a lot of assumptions. What would qualify as Torah, and that this doesn't seem like Torah. If Torah is supposed to be dealing with what really counts in our lives and in the world, then I would argue that in some shape or form, the Torah is trying to address this very scary reality, the scary reality that has nothing to do with primitivism. I mean, here we are with the least primitive stage of human existence that ever happened, right? We just get less and less primitive all the time. And what do? We kill each other, we are cruel to each other, we are totally hateful to each other, we're astoundingly evil. And evil exists on the greater and greater and greater degree than ever before. What do you do with that? So we live in a very comfortable situation, thank God. We are fortunate, we're blessed. We don't deserve to be this blessed, because if we deserve to be this blessed, then everybody deserves to be this blessed, and they're not. So what gives? So when we have images of evil, black hatters, the people like in the stereotypes of the silent movies, if we have images of evil forces, you want to call that primitive, or do you want to call that naming the truth? The truth is the evil is out there, and we haven't done enough, if it's possible, to defeat it. And that's also part of this myth. Is it actually really possible to defeat this collection of forces? Is there any hope for this? I mean, the Zohar paints the bleakest picture of evil, but then it constantly says that we have the power to defeat evil. It's not obvious. But when we say that it's primitive, it's because we're thinking that these are fairy tales and they shouldn't be believed. And I would challenge you, okay, so find a better way to talk about evil. I don't know that you're going to find a better way.
I guess when I think about the terrible things that are done today, that's on us. I don't think we need to bring it
Is it on us?
On a snake and a camel.
Is the coronavirus on us?
Well, that's
yes and no.
I don't think that's evil.
You don't think that hundreds of thousands and millions of people dying from some invisible bug is not evil?
I think of it as nature. It's not any different than earthquake. Is it different from earthquake?
There you are. So okay. So is that any different from earthquake? No. Let's put earthquake in it also. we have a world where very nice people, good people, are subject to terrible pain, devastation, destruction, and if they survive it, they have the memory and the experience of all of that. Isn't that bad? So it's not evil in the sense of I can point the finger at this person is responsible for doing it, but it's evil in the sense of it totally destroys human life and it totally corrupts the capacity of people to feel peace in their hearts. Is the word primal better than primitive here? So I would say yes, because primal means like original, starting from the beginning. But David, I think, he's using the word primitive thoughtfully because he's saying, haven't we gone past these kinds of boogeyman images? I don't want to put words in your mouth like God puts in words in the mouth of Bilam, but I think that's what I'm understanding you to be saying, right?
Yeah, I guess so. My mind is spinning so fast that I'm having a hard time even staying with this. I'm just thinking about um, anxiety and fear my mind is going from the words on the page and the conscious to some sort of fantasy of feeling and hysteria. That's what this evokes in me.
So yeah, and unfortunately, human history has witnessed those kinds of phenomena, and not just the earthquakes, but people hysterically turning on other people and being really cruel and murderous to them. Where do these forces come from?
Well, they're certainly the opposite of lovingness, aren't they?
They certainly are. So if love is real, then this other side of it has to be real too. Okay, Jen, and then Larry.
I'm kind of curious so God can appear from a whirlwind, right? Or seemingly as part of the whirlwind. That's a really destructive force. Are we kind of saying that God doesn't have that aspect for us? There's no, creating, preserving, destroying, all consistent within the same God?
I think that's a struggle that many people have. Anybody that still at this point has some kind of picture of God for themselves wants to still be holding on to some sense of God today. Most of the time, what I hear is a very sanitized kind of image of God, right? We've got a whole literature, and it's brought a lot of comfort to a lot of people. When bad things happen to good people. That is the title of a book, but it's also a genre. There's a lot of theological thought that, and also in the Jewish world, that was Rabbi Kushner, I think, right, who wrote that book. And there are other books as well. And there's a very strong desire to keep God out of this. God is the force.
Is that a necessary thing though in Judaism?
No, there's no such thing as necessary thing in Judaism. So this rabbi says this and this other rabbi says that. So, but I'm saying that as a trend, there is a very strong trend in modern, certainly American Jewish thinking. But to say, God is the force for the good stuff, not for the other stuff. And the Zohar doesn't go that far. The Zohar is waffles depending on which piece of the Zohar you're looking at, which voice is speaking in the Zohar at any particular time. But the idea again of evil as a dross means that they're locating the evil as originating in some divine process. We had it before as well. Jacob and Esau, we're going to get to Esau in a second. Esau is the bad guy. Esau is born of Isaac. Well, there's nothing we can do about it. He's Jacob's brother. So Mark wrote something in the chat. Hold on. 101 myths of the Bible, how ancient scribes invented biblical history. Okay, what's the point of that?
Well, the point of that is I just finished reading it.
Oh, so you want to make a siyum?
No. I just finished reading it. And what he does, for better or for worse, is he describes all of the basic ideas of the Torah as coming from Egyptian mythology. He identifies Jacob and Esau with the primordial battle between Set and Horus, the Egyptian god of good and the Egyptian god. So I'm just answering David. I mean, if you look at the Torah as something sophisticated, as reinterpreted by the rabbis, that's one thing. If you look at the Torah in terms of its connection to ancient Middle Eastern mythology, then it's a whole other way of looking at Torah. And I'm not saying that this guy has the answer, but I think that the purpose of the rabbis is always to reconstruct the Torah to make it somehow holy. Whereas the idea of holiness, according to this guy, has deep roots in a culture that preceded Judaism, that he claims has an enormous effect on Judaism. He goes through literally the entire patriarchal story, goes through Genesis, the patriarchal story. He draws analogies, whether they're supportable or not. But I just wanted to respond to David's idea. I don't think you can disregard the primitive nature of the Torah. Genesis, the whole idea of creation is incredibly primitive. And it's not even clear that the stories of Moses, etc., don't hold on to that. And I want to keep on saying primitive rather than primal, that these are very old ways of trying to deal with the problems of humanity. So I just wanted to put it on the table and forget about it.
All right, so we're not going to forget about it, but I do want to come back to the idea about primitive. Old is not the same thing as primitive. In our associations today, primitive is a derogatory term, right? The primitive has to do with ignorance. It has to do with not really getting the whole picture, not really understanding the real way that things work. That's why primitive is a tricky term, and it should be recognized that it has those connotations. And then if somebody wants to use that phrase, they need to clarify. Is that part of the meaning that they want to put in there or not? So that's why primal has less of that baggage, and it comes back to the old. So yes, I would definitely, I didn't read that book. I don't know how much of it holds up or not, but it's not a new revelation that this guy, is arguing in the most general terms. All of certainly for hundreds of years now, scholarship has been seeing the ancient context of biblical teachings, stories, images, words, as coming out of the roots of prior human experience, literature, religion, culture, etc. So that's.
But Rabbi, that's why the word primitive isn't a wrong word, because those cultures were fundamentally ignorant. The Zohar was written in the Middle Ages, and people in the Middle Ages knew next to nothing about the world.
I think that that's a simplification, a primitive simplification of what people knew and what they didn't know. Certainly, the Zohar doesn't know anything about the scientific picture of the world that we have. But the Zohar knows, probably certainly better than I know, knows something about life and about human beings and about God. And that's pretty sophisticated and deep. So the primitive lens that we apply all the time, of the primitive label that we apply all the time, is through a lens that has a certain very limited measure of what needs to be known or not. So yeah, the world is ignorant, and the world continues to be ignorant of many things. And there are many things that we've known now that we never knew before. But in the basic issues, the primal issues of living, I don't think the world was more ignorant then than now. I think that the struggle is continuous. Yeah, Larry, you've been waiting very patiently. Thank you.
No, it's a very interesting discussion. It seems to me that the Zohar's insight, or the Zohar's, I don't know if you use the word theology as a coherent theology, but that what's going on here is that evil is dependent on good. And that when you use the word parasitic before, it's a very important word because it means that evil requires or lives off of good, that the life force or the life source is also the life force. It shares the life, it shares the light, it shares the blood with evil. And I think about that in terms of the COVID, because over the last year and a half, part of what we've experienced is just general fear and trying to cope, but part of, for me, what it's been is sort of like contemplating what's going on. And from a scientific point of view, it's obvious that the virus is parasitic. It lives off of life. It's unlike what some people think, it's not trying to kill us. Because if it had a will, I'm not saying it has a will, but if it had a will, it wouldn't want to kill us. It would want us to keep living. In fact, that's how a pandemic disappears. It disappears when there are no more hosts. So that, in effect, the Zohar's pointing out that evil is a byproduct of creation. And like you talk about the slag or what's the word, dross, dross. And that I was thinking about the word yotzer, which means to create or to fashion, but it also, like the common wordplay is with yetzer, that yotzer spawns yetzer, that the yetzer, the evil inclination. And also one last thing, and I'll shut up, which is, I think that there's a psychological value in understanding that evil lives off of or is dependent upon good. In other words, I don't think it's just a question of medieval versus now. I think it's a question of how we live our lives and what we understand of evil. And that, it's hard to look in the face of evil and see anything about it that, anything about it other than like darkness. But it's not just that, because it's living off of the light. Anyway, those are the things those are the feelings I have.
Good. Shkoach. I don't want to go more into those questions. We do it a lot, and maybe as we should. I want to just add one other little piece to the to David's springboarding us into all of these different discussions. And I think that one of the quote unquote primitive elements of this is that it's stories, that it's not some kind of sophisticated prose that talks about abstract concepts and philosophical arguments about good and evil. It gives us, it gives us a narrative. It gives us a story, fairy tale-y, or childish in some ways. I encouraged a lot of people to start watching that TV show, The Good Place. It's a story. It's a story that can be a vehicle, hopefully, for people to then feel and think at the same time. And that's, I think, actually one of the good things that primitive peoples we're still in touch with. feeling and thinking at the same time, and not divorcing the two of them. So, I mean, I think that, you know, we have tendencies, we have our own preferences, we have our own emphases. But it's, you know, that the Torah starts us off with stories, and then it starts, you know, playing and mixing. And we talked about in the Torah study, the book of Bamidbar is an alternating book of stories and laws and stories and laws. Genesis is all stories. Vayikra is almost all laws, but it's a mix. It's a combination of the two, and they feed off each other. And these kinds of images that we have of bad angels and serpents and stuff like that, they're stories that can speak to us in a multi-layered way, where other kinds of communication might not necessarily be as rich. Possibly.
Maybe a part of this for me is that when I do something evil, then that's on me, and I'm having a reaction to snakes and camels. And what we do that's evil today, that's on us, and we have to deal with it. And the evil that's occurred in the past, almost within our lifetimes of you know, killing 6 million and going even further back, however far back you want to go, that's on the people who lived then. I mean, it's just maybe I'm just having some trouble with the imagery and putting it off somewhere. I mean, it's
the Zohar is not going to take away anybody's responsibility for their moral agency.
Yeah.
But part of what the Zohar is talking about here is the apparent unrecognizability of evil when it comes in extreme forms. The evil that you and I do, mostly, or at least what you do, isn't all that terrible. You know, it's like, it's, you know, it's within the basic spectrum of what human beings, you know, sort of can recognize as human. But then, again, even if we're not talking about natural cataclysms, or there is human behavior which we can't recognize as human, where we don't understand how the heck did this come out of a human being. And again, it doesn't have to be mass murder. It could be some of the stuff that we, you know, that we encounter almost every day. It's not easily relatable to us. It's hard for, I think, any one of us here to, you know, say, hey, I could be that mass shooter, or I could be the person that tortured this person, or trafficked this other person, or did all the other horrible things that I don't have to enumerate them. But people do things that are not recognizably human.
But they are human, and that's the point.
Of course they're human. I wouldn't argue that they're not, but I think that the truth of our experience needs to be recognized. When we are horrified by that kind of stuff, it's not simply because we hold a philosophical proposition that very bad things are very bad. There's a visceral sense that we have of repulsion and of mystery about that. Yeah, Merle.
I have a question. Am I on or off? Wait.
You're on.
So, related to what you've been saying and David's, am I wrong to think that
Yes.
the Zohar, I've only been, you know, in this class for not a year, so I don't know what came before, but it seems to me the Zohar is addressing people's behavior, God, maybe angels. And I put that in a different category than these natural disasters, like tidal waves and ice ages and earthquakes and volcanoes and pandemics. And things like that. Although there was an evil aspect to that because, you know, the president didn't deal with it the way he should have. But am I wrong in thinking that really the Zohar isn't talking about these other things, these more natural phenomenon? They're really just trying to explain things about people and how people should behave and how people develop and how this whole thing. Am I wrong about that?
You're not entirely wrong. How's that? Is
That's
that
good.
okay?
That's good.
Okay.
Good. Okay. That helps. Thank you.
Sandra, did you wanted to say something before? No, mute. Okay. But I see the shaking the head. Okay, good. All right. So to be continued one way or another, I'm sure. Let's keep going.
Where are we? From
352, third line on the page. From here, rungs branch out.
From, as I was saying, from here rungs branch out, countless aspects issuing into the world, spreading from here, controlling the world, all of them aspects of defilement, princes appointed throughout the world. Come and see, when Esav issued into the world, he issued completely red as a rose, hairy as a goat, root of empowered, shield-bearing chieftains ruling the world as already established.
Okay. So the note 264.
Root of empowered, shield-bearing chieftains ruling the world. Esav is prince of demons.
Okay, so he's bad, right? He's one of the bad guys. How do we know he's one of the bad guys? Because he's red, right? Red is bad. Red is a bad color. In the Zohar's system of colors, white is the best color, and red is a very bad color.
Who's got a red car?
What?
I was going to buy a red car.
Don't do it, please. Don't do it. Don't do it. And get white wall tires. Okay. So
Do you have white wall tires?
do as I say, not as I do.
Okay.
So, there you go.
And don't buy a green car.
No, why?
I don't know. That's been ingrained in me since I was a baby.
Wow.
You don't buy a green.
All right. What can I tell you? But I want to come back to this. There's this little piece in this paragraph, which is a little interesting. He's red as a rose. Red as a rose. Now, a rose is a very interesting entity for the Zohar. The Zohar has this whole idea of the Shekhinah as being a rose. That the rose has aspects that are red, but also it has whiteness to it as well. So, and the rose plays a very nice role in many stories in the Zohar. So there's a funny kind of sneaking in here of the divine, or a divine, allusion, not illusion, but allusion, a hint, so to speak. Esav is not a nobody, and as I said before, he's Jacob's brother. So and Jacob is Tiferet. Jacob is the central aspect of God. So Esav is, his twin, his evil twin. And of course, we have we had it before with Azazel, and the goats here are again the Seirim, which means the hairy ones, or the goats, or the demons. And if that's the demon mythology that underlies the Yom Kippur ritual, right, where we send one goat off into the desert, the demons' territory, to sort of like placate the demons so that we can get treated okay by God, right? And be forgiven. So here we go. Is this in that book, Mark, that red comes from Egypt as a bad color?
Yeah.
There you go. See? All right.
You know, I just got to say something about the thing that I posted, that instead of evil being parasitic on good, maybe good is parasitic on evil.
Wait, you posted that? Wait, I missed it.
Yeah, it's you know, I snuck it in when I shut up. The whole point of critical race
There it
theory,
is. Yeah, sorry.
the whole point of critical race theory is to look at all of the benefits of this wonderful country we live in as being parasitic upon the horrors that were the result of the situation that enabled this country to flourish. That this country flourished because of the sugar trade. And the sugar trade was 100% dependent upon slavery. So maybe it's not evil that's the parasite, maybe it's good that's the parasite. Maybe the world is inherently evil and good somehow manages to be, you know, come out of it. I mean, how much gold do you get out of the slag? Is the world mainly slag and a little bit of gold? Or is slag somehow, you know, sort of like the unfortunate byproduct of a good world? And I think this really gets at what the problem was for the Egyptian myths, because they saw evil as predominant. But anyway, let me shut up.
Okay, I think that important point, and I think that to, you know, if we're going to be, you know, brief, I will say this as a simple generalization, that that's where the Torah is militantly optimistic. That no matter how much power the Torah recognizes evil has, it refuses to cede the world to the evil. And it just keeps on pushing and pushing, and you know, it's like it's this you know, stubborn character that's in the boxing ring that keeps on getting knocked down again and again and again. There's a verse, Shivatayim Yakum Tzadik. A righteous person will pick themselves up from the ground 7 times over. Will get knocked down and then just pick themselves up again and again and again. And that's the story of the Torah. The story of the Torah is to recognize how bad things can be, and then say, Afal Piche, nevertheless, we keep going, and we go the other way. So it's not in the end interested in getting a finished tally where evil at any particular point could be winning on points. It's just, you haven't knocked me out yet, you didn't win. That's how I would say it in the, you know, in a simple, very blunt way. Yep. All right. One last thing, because my evil impulse doesn't let me just leave it alone. In a certain sense, that's again the difference between Noach and Abraham. Noach is the good that survives the evil. Abraham is the good that fights the evil. Now, Noach is the guy that is not recorded as saying anything. He doesn't rock the boat, pun intended. You know, he just saves himself. He does a really wonderful thing. He saves all these animals and so on. God tells him to do it, but he doesn't ever fight for anything. And Abraham represents that fight, to get beyond his own good fortune. All right. Come and see.
Come and see. Happy are those who preserve justice, preserving faith in the Blessed Holy One. For the Blessed Holy One is justice. One should be vigilant not to deviate to another way, but rather to preserve justice, since the Blessed Holy One is justice and all his ways justice.
So this is a very repetitive little paragraph, but the words are Ashrei Shomrei Mishpat. Happy are those, fortunate are those. The word Ashrei, we have it, from the famous prayers. The ones who preserve justice, who guard justice. And here the Zohar says that is not an easy thing to do. It doesn't take care of itself. The idea of guarding and preserving justice is exactly that fight. It's recognizing that it's not going to be automatic. It doesn't take care of itself. And this repetition, no, God is justice. Don't tell me God is bad. And you have to preserve it. And you have to be vigilant. You have to work hard on doing this. This very emphatic statement of a very simple thing, which is saying, do not give up. Just keep on doing this and don't deviate. Right? It's so easy to compromise. It's so easy to just give in. No, this is what you have to do. Okay.
Who performs tzedakah, righteousness, all the time? Now can a person perform tzedakah, charity, all the time?
Right. So it says, Oseh tzedakah b'chol eit. Performing tzedakah, righteousness, b'chol eit. And the way the Zohar reads it, the way the Gemara reads it, all the time, at every second. So the Zohar and the Gemara beforehand asked, what does that mean? I give some tzedakah to somebody. So then I did tzedakah. What is it? To continuously and continually be doing tzedakah? How do you accomplish something like that? This refers rather,
this refers to one who strives to follow ways of Torah and performs tzedakah with those in need, for whoever performs tzedakah with a poor person, that act extends above and below.
Okay, so what's their answer? What's the Zohar's answer to this? I mean, still, isn't it still time bound? It says a person, this refers to one who strives to follow the ways of the Torah. Great, so I strive to follow the ways of the Torah, but 8 hours a day I'm sleeping, and another 5 hours a day I'm eating, and then I'm on my emails. So how much time am I striving to? How can somebody be doing righteousness all the time? What's the Zohar's answer? The Zohar's answer is that any moment that you do righteousness, the ripple effect is forever. The ripple effect goes on all the time. Any particular effort that you make toward righteousness, the ramifications of that effort are endless. And they are not just endless temporally, they are endless in cosmic terms. They go above and into the divine itself. Come and see. Next page.
Come and see. Whenever one engages in tzedakah, that act ascends on high, reaching beyond to the sight of Jacob, supernal chariot, drawing blessings to that sight from the spring of all springs. Through that act of tzedakah, he draws blessings abundantly to all those below, to all chariots and all powers, all of whom are blessed, lavished with illumination, fittingly, since all of them are called et time. Thus, who perform tzedakah all the time.
Okay, so the word eight is now said, the word eight means a time. We have in Kohelet, Lakol 8, the 8 the Kol Chayfetz Tachat HaShamayim. Everything there is a season, right, etc., etc. Right. So that word 8 is there in that chapter in Kohelet again and again and again and again and again. So the Zohar understands the word 8 to refer to Shekhinah, and then everything affected by Shekhinah. So the realm of time is identified as the divine realm of interacting with this world, because this is the world where time functions in a meaningful way. God is Yud Hey Vav Hey, right? God is before and after and in between and will be and was and is. Time is nothing for God in God's own world. But when God chooses to relate to our world, then God takes on the aspect of time. That's Shekhinah. That's the bridge to us. And of course, time has, so many different kinds of ways of being experienced. Sometimes as something wonderful, and oftentimes as something sad or challenging or painful. Time always, for us, always means something is going to end, right? Time is the opposite of eternity. Eternity is endless. Time is always finite. Nevertheless, tzedakah, the righteousness that a person does, fills up time. The righteousness that a person does in one moment, says the Zohar, has the power, it spreads up and down and around throughout all of the finite dimensions. We have a phrase, and we say it also in every night in the traditional evening prayers. We say, God, you so love us, and you give us the Torah, and we will always cherish the Torah and hold on to the Torah, just like the Zohar says we should. The words of the Torah, the mitzvot of the Torah, are our life and the length of our days. So I recently was speaking about this. Orech Yameinu, the length of our days, right? Length in our experience is some kind of intuition of endlessness, right? Short is when we really feel the limitations, and long is always when we feel like it's, there's more than we feared. Length is related to compassion. Length is related to peace. Length is related to calm and giving. When the Israelites can't listen to Moses, who tells them that God is infinite and endless and always, says V'lo shamu el Moshe mikotzer ruach. Their spirit was short. How could they embrace? How could they absorb a sense of length, a sense of endurance? If they're stuck in the short experience of life. The Zohar uses the word arich anpin. It takes it from the Torah. God is compassionate because God is erech apayim, long-faced, long enduring, long breathing, taking a nice long deep breath instead of exploding at someone, instead of attacking somebody right away after they do something terrible. God takes a big long breath and takes their time, counts to 10, right? That's the idea of length. That's the idea of compassionate forgiveness. Every act of goodness that we do, says the Zohar, is not lost in time. It doesn't flicker and then go away, but it just keeps on echoing and reverberating and giving, right? It's the gift that keeps on giving. And that's Becholei. It reverberates throughout all of the divine dimension of time. Thus, before them stuck up all the time. All right, we have a little more time yet. Look at that. Come and see.
Come and see. When Israel dwelled in the Holy Land, they drew blessings from above to below. When Israel left the Holy Land, they came under alien authority, and blessings were withheld from the world.
Okay, so now we've gone from time to space. And here, time is a little more intangible, right? Space is, in human experience, much more definable. Here is here and there is there. There is not here. So boundaries are more tangibly felt in our experience of space. And the Torah enforces that sense of boundaries, right? The Torah talks about spaces that are holy and spaces that are not holy, spaces that can tolerate impurity and spaces that can't tolerate impurity. The temple is holy and it therefore cannot tolerate impurity. The Holy of Holies is the least tolerant of any kind of impurity or any kind of limited presence. Human beings can't even go in there, even when they're pure. So space is the realm where limitations, the lineations become very, very, very apparent. So the Holy Land, says the Zohar, is a place of blessing. Outside the Holy Land, all those bad guys that we described before, they dominate the world. Those are the ones where it says, right, all of them aspects of defilement, princes appointed throughout the world. The one place that the world is exempt from, at least theoretically, if all things go well, is the land of Israel. But we hold the key to that. If we bring in, back to David's point, it's on us. If we act in ways that betray God, then we open the door and we let the evil into the sacred space. And then we get kicked out and the evil takes over. Right? The vacuum is filled by, when we leave, the vacuum is created, and then when we leave, the vacuum is filled by the evil. So, and then blessings are withheld from the world. Okay. One more paragraph.
Come and see. Jacob was under holy authority as soon as he left the land. He entered alien territory. Before he came under alien authority, the Blessed Holy One appeared to him in a dream, and he saw all that he saw. Holy angels accompanied him until he sat by the well. As soon as he sat by the well, water rose toward him, as with Moses, who encountered his wife there. Similarly with Jacob, who there encountered his wife. Mystery of the matter, the well only rises when it sees its link to conjoin.
Okay, so Jacob has a similar experience. Remember, we had this already before from the very opening verses of the Torah portion. Jacob is in the land of Israel. He's in the Holy Land, and he has to leave and go to a foreign place, to Haran. We had all kinds of explanations of what Haran means, but it's outside of the land of Israel. And his dream happens right before he leaves the sacred space of the land of Israel. So he's vouchsafed this blessed vision of God and of all the angels, the ladder, because he's still in the land of Israel where he can get all of these blessings. But then he's going to get to this other place outside. And this is where the drama begins. Because Jacob is Jacob, but he is in alien territory, right? So how is he going to survive? And then we have this idea, even in alien territory, there's a well that sees that he's one of the good guys. The waters rise up to meet him so that he can be sustained, supported, and find his bashert, be strengthened, and be able to get through all of the enemy territory that he's going to have to negotiate. Okay, we're going to stop here. We'll get to Rabbi Abba next time, I hope. And that's it, okay?
Thank you. Good night.
Okay.